great basketball.
Defender to the basket, Jason Tatum.
We covering pre and post game back on this channel.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back in to the Celtics Talk Weekly YouTube channel. I'm your host, Rob. Joined with me is my co-host, Justin Lowe. The Celtics fall short of history. They were on the doorstep, they were knocking, and the Heat shut the door and called the cops on the Celtics. As the C's fall 103-84 at home in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Jason Tatum goes down on the very first play of the game, sprains his ankle, shaken up, not the same throughout the whole game, kind of out there as a decoy. Celtics just couldn't get it going. Jaylen Brown led all Celtics scorers, yet he was rough. 19 points on 35% shooting on the floor. 8 turnovers, 1 of 9 from downtown. Derek White, kind of the only bright spot for the Boston Celtics. 18 points. He showed heart. He showed some fight. And then I also thought Robert Williams did a pretty solid job. 8.6 rebounds. He was honestly better when they were on the court than when he was off. It felt like, at least. Justin, we have so much to talk about here. First, what kind of went down in this playoff series against the Miami Heat, right? And then where do the Celtics go from here? So obviously, let's start with what happened in this series against Miami. How did the Celtics put themselves into a hole, and how come they weren't able to get out of it?
I think the Celtics fell into similar situations in which they fell in last postseason run, and a big reason why they came up short last season. Turning the ball over, like a lot of it was Boston making mistakes that hurt Boston. A lot of it, like, you got to give Miami credit for sure. Like, Miami's zone is lethal; they know what they're doing. But at the same time, Rob, the Celtics hurt themselves a lot in this series, and that came back to bite them. I really don't know where to go from here. I mean, Jaylen Brown, 8 turnovers last night in a Game 7 situation from arguably your best player on the team. Jason Tatum, an ankle injury. Obviously, I'm not throwing that excuse and saying that's the reason why we lost, but obviously that's a huge blow. He even said it. I was a shell foreman myself. But this series should not have been decided in a Game 7. The Celtics were down 0-3. They had 2 home games in the beginning of this series in which they could have easily won. And I do say easily because they had double-digit leads in both games. In both games, they let go of the rope in both the third quarter and the fourth quarter. So a lot of things that hurt the Celtics last season in the postseason came back to bite them in this postseason. And I think that's pretty evident in the Celtics have a lot of work to do, and that's why we're here today to talk about how much work the Celtics really have to do. I get we're just two 20-year-olds behind a camera talking about the Celtics. You know, we're not in Brad Stevens' position, we're not in Whit Grossbeck's, and we're not in Joe Mazzulla's seats at all, so we don't know that much, but we can give you our perspectives on what we think needs to happen for this offseason. Rob, essentially, this is a bigger offseason than most for the Boston Celtics, in my books at least.
Yeah, and I want to touch base on this series.
Yeah.
Boston lost every game that mattered. Every game they needed to win this series, they lost.
Right.
Games 4, 5, and 6, they were playing with house money. Game 6, they should have lost. The tip in at the end saved them. And you know what? That's how basketball works. Derek White made a great play. But at the end of the day, games 1, 2, 3, and 7 were the games in which the Boston Celtics needed to get a win. And when it mattered most, they came up short. And you know what? I applaud them for fighting and clawing back into the series. They are the more talented team. But I think the better team won. I think the Miami Heat, at the end of the day, their execution was much better than the Boston Celtics. And execution is the biggest part of basketball, especially in the playoffs. And the Celtics, they almost gave away Game 6, just like they've given away many games, just like they almost gave away Game 7 entering the finals, and just like they gave away the 2-1 lead and the Game 4 lead in Boston in the finals. So it's nothing we haven't seen from Boston. And again, we were asking them to do the impossible. To come back down 0-3 is probably the hardest task in basketball for a team, and they came damn close. So I applaud them there. But once you lose the first two at home to the lower seed, you essentially put yourself in an impossible situation. And you figure if they just win one of those games, this series I think goes entirely different. But I think the Celtics have a lot to look at. Maybe not a lot to do, but I think there's a lot to look at and address. And I don't know if you follow us on Twitter. We both run that account, but I put out a thread on moves that I think in areas I think that need to get looked at. And we're going to go over those one by one, starting with the roster. There is a lot, I think, to be said about this Celtics roster. It was talented, but I still think we saw some holes here and there. First, let's address Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown had a phenomenal season. His scoring went up. I think all of his numbers went up. 26 points per game, back as an all-star, all-NBA second team nod. He had a really bad series. Which we saw last year in the Eastern Conference Finals. Miami gets the best of Jaylen Brown. They just do. In a game in which Jason Tatum got hurt in the first 40 seconds of the game, and the Celtics needed their number one score, Jaylen Brown wasn't able to answer that call, and he addressed that in the post-game show, in the post-game interview. He addressed that he let his teammates in the city down. And I blame him and I don't blame him, Justin. And so first things first is you got to re-sign this guy. The thing with Brown is I don't know if there's anybody in the market that is going to put you closer to a championship than Jaylen Brown does. Obviously, you can look at guys like Damian Lillard and Pascal Siakam, but the thing that scares me with Dame is he's 33 years old and he's a point guard. We've seen this story before with Kemba Walker. One wrong, that's the Bostonian me right there. The one wrong injury to a point guard can really derail their career. He's old, he's talented, he's great. I don't make the move for Dame. I re-sign Jaylen. And with doing so, when you re-sign Jaylen, Justin, I think you address to Jaylen Brown, listen, you have X, Y, and Z. You really need just to crispen up your game, right? Get in the lab, Jaylen. Get your handles, get your control, get your playmaking a little bit better. He's gotten better every year, so I think he can do it. But that's the next step for Jaylen Brown, Justin.
Yeah, I would say with Jaylen Brown, if I were to put my thumb on two things that he really needs to work on, and this is coming from a guy I could never do what he does, so I just want to put that out there. But just with the human eye, you look at Jaylen Brown and you see his ball handling. He really, really struggles with ball handling, and when it comes to a team like Miami, where they're so on ball dominant defensively, they're just so good with the active hands and really clogging up the lanes and stuff. That really hurt Jaylen Brown. And how many times have we seen Jaylen Brown run into the lane, get clogged, and then turn the ball over, either bounce it off of his own foot or just lose it single-handedly? Like, that's so many times. Then another thing that really needs to get worked on, many people don't think it's that important, but for a team that has found themselves in many clutch situations, not only this playoffs, but this season, he's got to make his free throws. That free throw percentage has to go up. It absolutely has to go up. When you're in the playoffs and you're in these tight game situations, every point matters for your team. He's got to clean up his playmaking and his dribbling, like you said. Later down the list, you'll see that we kind of talked about a more ball dominant forward, a forward that can shoot the ball, a forward that could pass the ball, dribble the ball. Doesn't necessarily mean they have to take 30 shots a game and have the ball in their hands 24/7. But at the same time, you need somebody like that. And Jaylen Brown needs to work on that this offseason. And like you said, though, give Jaylen Brown a lot of credit. Every offseason, he's had to work on at least something. And every offseason or every preseason, he's come and shown his improvement. So we're hoping that we can see that this summer.
Yeah, for sure. And again, next one.
Wait, where are you
Trade,
gonna wait? Where when with the people that say, Rob, trade Jaylen Brown, release Jaylen Brown, who out there, who are you going to make that move for? Like you said to me earlier, and I agreed with you 100%. Who are you gonna get for Jaylen Brown? What is better out there? What's the better package? What fits? Because you get rid of Jaylen Brown, you need to find somebody that almost perfectly fits Jason Tatum as well, right? So like you have to you can't just be so get rid of Jaylen Brown. Okay, what are you getting rid of Jaylen Brown for, and
Listen,
what are you getting in return?
you are past the point in which trading Jaylen Brown is acceptable. Reason being, Kevin Durant was on the market last offseason
Hmm.
for Jaylen Brown. It was clear that the Celtics, that was a topic of conversation. That move was the only acceptable move for Jaylen Brown, I think, out there. Reason being, because you were going to get 3 years of Kevin Durant, in which if he was healthy, the Celtics would probably hoist two finals trophies, most likely, right? Kevin Durant is one of those guys in which if you win now, he's the guy you go for. Again, I don't think Damian Lillard's the answer for the Celtics. I don't think Pascal Siakam's the answer. And quite frankly, I don't think trading Jaylen Brown for a high draft pick's the answer as well. If you look at Atlanta, Trae Young and those guys aren't the answer. Brown is a super phenomenal and gifted offensive player. And I'm going to touch base on this with the coaching. But I think a lot of what needs to change is the spots in which Brown and Tatum are getting the ball and operating in. Um, this coaching staff does not play to the strength of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. A lot of what they get is built strictly off themselves. And I think that a great coach puts their great players in positions to succeed. And I don't think Brown and Tatum were put in great positions to succeed all season long. And I think moving forward, that's something you have to look at. Brown, all NBA second team. There's not I don't think there's going to be an offer out there that realistically puts you closer to a championship ring next season or 4 or 5 seasons after that, as JB is only 26. So, in terms and regards of Jaylen Brown, you don't move him, you re-sign him, you retool, you repiece, and you address other areas in which help Brown and Tatum improve their game. So let's move on to the next one. Peyton Pritchard. We got ourselves a gem sitting at the end of our bench in Peyton Pritchard. Personally speaking, I don't think he fits the Boston Celtics vision or identity. Identity is something we're going to be talking about later on in the show, Justin. This team's identity is defense. Peyton Pritchard unfortunately doesn't fit that. I love Pritchard. I think he's a hell of a talent. I think he could be a pretty good piece to a good basketball team somewhere else in the league. With that being said, that's value sitting at the end of your bench. I think you move Peyton Pritchard and use him as a package deal, potentially for a big man / wing. But I also, with that being said, do think there's a world in which you keep Peyton Pritchard and move on from Malcolm Brogdon, which I didn't tweet, but after reading about it and really thinking about it, I think that one of Peyton Pritchard and or Malcolm Brogdon, whoever can get you a better asset in return, I think one of those two guys need to be moved.
Really? So Brogdon, a year after, that was almost one of the most important acquisitions that we've seen in recent Celtic history. Uh, when it comes to Peyton Pritchard, though, you sit there and you wonder, like, what? It's a very weird situation with Peyton Pritchard because it's a player that you would love to keep on your team, and it's a player that for your 13th, 14th, 15th man is probably one of the best that you'll find. But at the same time, you see and you go out there and you can get some legitimate, somewhat relatively good trade value for Peyton Pritchard. He doesn't bring the defense. I think he brings the defensive intensity with the ball pressure and his quickness. But at the same time, with how small he is, and I know that's such a cliche thing to say, but it's true. How many times this series, and that I believe what was it, game 2, where Jimmy Butler just rose up right on Peyton Pritchard, and Pritchard was playing some pretty good defense, but just sometimes it comes down to just being taller than the other guy. And, for that, it's very weird. Peyton Pritchard has expressed, throughout the season how he wants to play a bigger role. If the Celtics choose to keep Brown, Smart, and Brogdon, I find it very, very difficult that you'll be able to squeeze Peyton Pritchard anywhere in that guard rotation. And then also you figure you have Derek White, who quite honestly would probably be your Eastern Conference Finals MVP if he had pulled it out yesterday, if the Celtics pulled it out last night. But I don't know. The Peyton Pritchard situation continues to be a head scratcher for me as well, Rob. I see a world where the Celtics keep him, and then I see a world where we ship him off in a package deal, and we can get some, fairly valuable pieces.
Yeah, and again, I think these are topics in areas in which the Celtics need to look at. They might not make all these moves, but I think the area in which Peyton Pritchard, his value in that backup guard spot needs to be addressed yet again. Reason being for the Malcolm Brogdon area is Brogdon will be on an expiring deal next year. He is potentially needs surgery on that arm. And that was a move in which Malcolm Brogdon was brought into Boston to win a championship this season, and they fell short of that. So I think you steer away from Malcolm Brogdon and/or Pritchard again. Whoever's market and value holds higher in assets, the trade is more valuable. I think you make that move, and that's an area in which you do address. Next one being is Marcus Smart. Boston is going to have to make some tough decisions this offseason. They just will. It's time to tear the Band-Aid, I think, on some of these players, on guys like Al Horford, Marcus Smart, and potentially Robert Williams. And I think Marcus Smart's value on the market should be addressed and looked into, because we have had him since 8 years now.
14.
Yeah, 2014, coming up on 10 or 9 or 10, I believe. So Marcus Smart is the heart and soul of the Boston Celtics. There's no denying that. But it kind of feels as if the heart and soul of the Boston Celtics where it currently lies, will not win an NBA championship, right? That's what it feels like, because it feels like the heart and soul needs to just change. It feels as if the values and lie in the locker room need to change a little bit. So I look into the Smart market. If something presents itself in which you can get a big back or a big or a wing in return for Smart that holds good value, maybe a high value pick alongside that big or wing, that's a move I consider making, Justin.
I would consider this is the first off season where I've been semi on the take a look at the Marcus Smart market. For me, I still don't see the way we win a title without him. I'm not saying he's going to be the reason why. Maybe it's just because the last 9 years, and specifically the last 4, 5, 6 years, he's been the heart and soul of this roster, almost like the team captain. So I find myself still finding it very hard to believe. I think the Marcus Smart slander is way more significant than it actually should be. I think sports talk radio just chews this guy out. I mean, he could have a 30-point triple-double and they'll still find a way to chew him out. But I thought he was exceptionally well in this series. But I do think it's time to take a look. Like, that doesn't mean you have to trade him. That doesn't mean at all that you have to trade Marcus Smart. Take a look out there. See what the market looks like. If you don't think you can find anything better or anything that could help improve, then you don't do it. That's the advantage of exploring the market. That doesn't mean you have to go out and make the move for sure. But I'm sure Brad Stevens would not mind at least looking to see what's out there. Hey, if we look to see what's out there for Jaylen Brown last year, there's no reason why they shouldn't go out, look for guys like Peyton Pritchard or Marcus Smart and see what's out there.
Yeah, and again, you're going to have to make tough moves this offseason. It's time. It's proven. This was the year in which you were supposed to get back to the finals at the very least and win the championship. You made the proper moves. You had the championship roster, and you fell short to the 8th seed. That happened. And I don't think that's something you can just go past, because the opportunity the second the Milwaukee Bucks were eliminated was the second the Boston Celtics were, in my opinion, the odds-on overwhelming favorite to win the NBA championship. The
Right.
talent was there, the star power was there, the depth was there, the defense was there, the shooting was there. They fell short, and it all was mental. And I think there were some coaching factors as well. We're going to get into coaching. But again, I think you have to shake things up a little bit so that the Boston Celtics don't fall into that same dirty habit that they have for the past 6 years now. Next one up, you got to address Grant Williams. Grant Williams is someone that I think falls into the Boston Celtics identity category. You first have to figure out what your identity is going to be. If you ask me what it is, I think it should be defense, because I think our defensive identity has proven time and time again that that is when the Boston Celtics will be at their best, is when they're playing high-level defense. And Grant Williams, in my opinion, is a guy that continues to show that he can play high-level defense alongside with knocking down threes when he needs to. I think he isn't the Al Horford replacement that we need, but I think Grant Williams is a valuable bench piece in which his value in the market right now is not going to be high. He's not going to sniff 20 million. He probably might barely sniff 10 million. So, Justin, I think you bring Grant Williams, if possible, back to Boston on a long-term deal.
Yeah, I think it's a very low risk, high reward type deal with Grant Williams. I think Grant Williams has shown and he has proven that he can be that guy off the bench. We've seen Grant Williams take a lot of heat this season, and we've seen Grant Williams at times maybe go on the slight decline. I think with Grant, especially in these playoffs, his ability to stay ready was really impressive. I mean, we saw for the first time in 2 years since his rookie season, saw him get benched for DNP, healthy scratch. Like, we haven't seen that from Grant Williams since maybe his sophomore year, 2021. But nonetheless, this series, he came in, he responded this series. I thought he played very well for the lack of minutes that he got against Atlanta, for the lack of minutes he got against Philadelphia. He responded very well. I would have liked to see him perform better in game 6 and 7, but at the same time, I would have liked everybody else to perform better in game 6 and 7. I just thought I think he brings that intensity as well. Rob, I loved every bit of that going head to head with Jimmy Butler. I absolutely love that. You need that intensity. And he's also a guy off the bench. He's almost like that two-way player. He can knock down threes consistently on top of that and run down the court and play great defense 1 through 5 on anybody. So I think it's very low risk, high reward with Grant Williams. Not 20 million, but definitely, if you're talking anywhere between 8 and I'd say maybe the cutoff is 11, 8 and 11 million.
Yeah, for sure. Grant is a guy, you said it best. His ability to stay ready was truly unmatched. Up and down year, a contract year for him in which he kind of underperformed and missed out an opportunity for a big deal this offseason. But with that being said, he never once, I thought, got negative. He stayed positive through the whole year, and I think that was alone earns him, I think, some to get paid by Boston. 8 to 11's a good spot. I wouldn't be mad if we stretched it out to 12, 13. Anything over 13, I think it's an overpay. But again, Grant Williams, I resign. If you're not re-signing him, you are signing and trading him. But you can't let Grant Williams walk for nothing. There has to be an asset either coming in or Grant Williams returning. In the Grant Williams situation, he's too valuable, in my opinion, to let walk.
Correct.
Next one up falls kind of into a lot of what we've been talking about in terms of searching the Pritchard market, the smart market, and the potential sign and trade with Grant, even though I think we should re-sign Grant, is a wing that can handle. And when I say handle, I mean a wing in which can create for the Celtics offense. A lot on which was happening, I think Tatum and Brown need to play less basketball. We've seen so many times that they're just so tired and beat, and they're getting to an age in which they're no longer super, super young. 27 and 26 this upcoming season is still young, but it's getting to the point where you could see injuries kind of take a toll on your body. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So I
Mm.
think that a wing, I love Sam Hauser, but Hauser's a guy in which he thrives best when a guy is feeding him the ball. I think you need a wing in which can create offense, kind of like what we saw Caleb Martin do to our Boston Celtics. I really think the wing market should be explored as a backup. If you're going to move on from Grant, Smart, or Pritchard, I think a wing is the direction you go, like an OG Anunoby.
I was gonna say you go to a OG Ananobi. I'm looking at free agents this upcoming summer: a Kelly Oubre Jr., a Torrey Craig, Cam Reddish, who's been linked to Boston many times. You get a veteran like a Terrence Ross. But I also feel like if they wanted to go Terrence Ross, they would have gotten him months ago when he was available, free agency. Um, I think you add without subtracting if you could, but also I just like you love Sam Hauser. Like us here at Celtics Talk, we're huge Sam Hauser fans, but I just don't know if he gets it done. I mean, that's why Grant was so valuable, I think, in the playoffs, because he could kind of play two ways, able to knock down shots and play defensively. Hauser, a little bit of a liability on the defensive end, although he has improved. And when he's not knocking down shots, it's really hard to really put the ball in Sam Hauser's hands, or really put Sam Hauser on the court. So I think OG Anunoby would be very solid, but you'd also have to look at the market. This is like, one of those shows. So when we have when we go into the off season, we have the shows. Hopefully we'll have Seamus with us to talk about the salary cap and all that, because you would probably think that an OG Anunoby is going to want a lot of money compared to a Grant Williams, a Terrence Ross, Kelly Oubre Jr. So, the market has to be explored. That and the big man market, which I'm sure we'll get to, have to be explored, because Jason Tatum, especially in the regular season, cannot be playing 35 to 42 minutes a game. That can't happen.
Absolutely. And you said it. Big man, find a Al Horford replacement. It's time. Listen, Al Horford's going to be 37 years old. And I think what played a factor into his poor postseason shooting was his legs just going. He looked old.
Yes.
And in which a year ago, he had the best playoffs of his entire career. And I think a big factor of that, honestly, Robert Williams needed to play probably 10 to 12 more minutes a game in which he was playing. But I do think the Al Horford replacement, it's time. Al should be sitting at the end of your bench playing 12 to 15 minutes a game. 12 to 15 really good minutes to game in the regular season. And then when the postseason rolls around, that's when Al Horford really gets his work for us next year. But the dude's 37. You can know he got cooked by Bam Adebayo all series long due to his lack of speed. He's a guy that you can put up against really well against a guy like Giannis or Embiid. We got to wall up. But the second someone can go around that wall and sneak under it, it gets tough. I think it's time to find the Al Horford replacement. There's a couple names I'd go with for the Al Horford. I'd go a little bit smaller, honestly, because I want to slot Robert Williams back into the starting lineup. A name in which I would go for is a guy like Jerami Grant. I would be content. Honestly, you could go with, like you said, Kelly Oubre is another name in which I would like to see the Celtics be linked to. Kelly Olynyk's another one where I think that he's honestly a really valuable asset that's playing on a bad basketball team, in which Kelly Olynyk, I think, could help you out. And honestly, in terms of big men, Justin, there's two names that come to mind for me that fit the Boston Celtics really well. And those two names are Mo Bamba and Wendell Carter Jr. I think Wendell Carter Jr. is exactly the big man that translates to winning basketball in the NBA. He has a face-up game. If you need to get an easy bucket, it's there. But he's super talented in that dunker spot that we see Robert Williams play. I'm starting to steer away from Robert Williams due to his injury. However, I haven't given up on him. But if the Celtics can make a move and sign Wendell Carter Jr., I think that puts them in a very, very comfortable spot moving forward. Wendell Carter, he can stretch the floor. He can knock down perimeter shots if he needs to. He plays phenomenal underrated defense, and he's a phenomenal rebounder. I think, and I would be shocked if Orlando is willing to pay him because of the money they're going to have to spend on Paolo Banchero, Jalen Suggs, Markelle Fultz, and those guys, and Franz Wagner moving forward. Wendell Carter is probably an expendable piece moving forward for the Orlando Magic. So if I'm Boston, I'm looking into a sign and trade for Wendell Carter using the pieces in which Peyton Pritchard, Grant Williams, and those guys hold value to.
Yeah, 100%. I think you definitely got to look at it. And I think, Wendell would fit pretty well with Joe Mazzulla's offense. I know we're going to get to the coaching later on in the episode, but, Carter and Bamba, they can give it to you defensively. They can also step behind that 3-point line. Kelly Olynyk is another name that has been linked to Boston, specifically last year at the deadline. The Celtics actually almost made a deal for him. But, Kelly Olynyk's ability to stretch the floor, we've seen that in Boston, and it's only gotten better throughout his career. Kelly Olynyk's not this huge, drastic name that'll win you a title, but he's also a great slotting guy. He can stretch the floor. Mazzulla loves to play fast. Mazzulla loves to shoot threes. He could do that. He's great off the pick and roll. I think Kelly Olynyk is also really solid with the ball in his hands, Rob. He's a very solid playmaker. But there needs to be a move because, as you said, Horford's going to be 38 by playoff time next year. He's Robert Williams, as great as he is, he can't stay healthy. So you have to bank on, you almost have to, in my opinion, when you're trying to go with depth, you also have to look at worst case scenario. Robert Williams goes down. That's almost every season. Robert Williams suffers some sort of injury that's more than likely going to be long-term. You hope that doesn't happen, but career history, it's happened. So you kind of have to bank on that. And worst comes to worst, you have a healthy Robert Williams playing the course of the 82-game season, and then you have a guy like Wendell Carter Jr. That is going to be absolutely spectacular for the Boston Celtics, and they need to take a look at that. I would also not mind the Celtics take a look at the free agent market and go towards almost like a veteran. I would not mind. Here's the thing. I love Luke Cornett as a locker room guy. He did step up this season. He did have a better year in Boston compared to his first 2 years. That's not the answer. Mike Muscala, who is a great shooter percentage-wise, I think the best shooting big man in the NBA, that's not going to work. I would probably love to re-sign Griffin to that vet minimum, store him on the bench with Al Horford, and then bring in a guy like Wendell, Mo Bamba, Kelly Olynyk. Maybe you even go Hassan Whiteside. That name's been thrown around in there. You have to construct your roster. And I also think you asked Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who would they like to play with? I think that's very important. Keep your stars happy. Keep your stars comfortable. I think that's also a big factor as well, Rob.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Jeremy
I think
was a good name as well that you mentioned. And who knows, with everything going down in Portland, they might just throw everybody on the trade market. I mean, quite literally, that's a good situation to keep an eye on because guys like Cam Reddish, a wing that we're looking for, he's on Portland. Does he get re-signed? Does he get brought back to Portland? That's a situation you keep your eye on.
You talk about having a big season. The Blazers have a crazy direction to move in. They either have the third pick and commit to tanking and move on from Damian Lillard, or they move that third pick, go all in on a superstar, right, and try to bring a piece in with Damian Lillard that can maybe get them over the hump because the West is kind of wide open right now. I don't see the Denver Nuggets running the West entirely for the next 5 years. I think you could see a new team come out of the Western Conference every year. So that Portland situation is definitely a situation for basketball fans to keep their eye on. So let's move on to coaching adjustments. I've been reading the chat real quick. Gallinari, I moved Gallo as a piece contract just to get the contract off the books. He's old. It's unfortunate that he tore his ACL, but I'm moving Gallinari. So let's move on to the offseason. The Celtics are most likely keeping Joe Mazzulla, which is, in my opinion, a questionable decision. But at the end of the day, Joe bought himself more time. He did. That's what happens when you make a comeback and go to game 7. Um, here's something I want to talk about before I dive into coaching. And that is someone by the name of Wick Grosbeck. Wick handled the Ime Udoka situation in a personal sense, not in a business sense. There is something to this story that isn't out, and it's not out for a reason.
Hmm.
Ime Udoka has a job right now. That tells you everything you need to know in terms of what happened. What happened was someone got their feelings hurt who was close to Wick Grosbeck. Whether it was a minority owner, whether if it was someone that had a close relationship with Wick Grosbeck, someone's wife did something wrong with Ime Udoka, who was close to Wick. That's the truth. That is the truth. Because if it was something worth suspending and firing the head coach for, he would not have a job in the NBA right now. He just wouldn't. It would have come out. If it was something serious, it would have been said. What happened is someone got their feelings hurt, and it costed Boston Celtics a championship. It just did. So that's the first thing I want to say is Wick Grosbeck, you fucked this up. Wick Grosbeck is to blame. You can't blame Joe Mazzulla because the guy was put into a really tough situation as a 34-year-old to take a championship team to the NBA Finals. And if you're Brad Stevens, you can blame Brad, but you shouldn't, because Brad Stevens was put into a situation 2 days before training camp starts to find a head coach in which the Boston Celtics needed some continuity. And he picked a guy the players liked. And he said, hopefully they can get this done. Was it smart to hire Joe Mazzulla? Probably not.
But in the moment, that's kind of all we could do.
But in the moment, you have to get a guy for training camp. And Mazzulla was that guy. And the Celtics looked really good in February as they were the number 1 team in the league for 3 straight months. But it all goes back to Wick Grosbeck, because Wick royally screwed this up for the Boston Celtics by suspending Ime Udoka for an entire year and then firing him.
Yeah.
So in the terms of coaching, that's what screwed up was Wick Grosbeck.
I think you look at it and you go, usually these coaches, first of all, coaching change normally doesn't happen in the middle of the season, let alone 2 days before the first preseason game or, practice or whatever it was. Usually you have a off season to pick out your staff and to really game plan for training camp, let alone the regular season. Game plan for training camp. Go through the playbook, go through the drills, go through the workouts, go through the habits. That's kind of when you find out the trials and tribulations. Joe Mazzulla didn't have that. Joe Mazzulla got thrown right into the mix. So, to be, 1 game away from the second straight NBA Finals appearance, after being down 0-3, nearly made history. You didn't, but, you're right there. You can't really place a ton of credit, on Joe Mazzulla. But at the same time, I think this situation was handled poorly. I think a lot of the information came out in a very,
Jason Tatum found out the exact same way me and you found out.
Right. And what do we know, right? Compared to Jason Tatum. I think, it was handled very, very, very poorly. And for an organization that prides themselves on formality and respect and loyalty, I feel as if that was not the case with how this situation unfolded. And I don't know. Did we pull the trigger on Joe Mazzulla in terms of or on Ime Udoka in terms of come All-Star break? I think Wick and Brad came to the decision of we don't want Joe Mazzulla going into the playoffs thinking he may be without a job at the end of the playoffs. I think this was rushed, and it's a situation that could have been handled a lot better internally. could have been handled a lot better. And like you said, Rob, there's a lot to this that we don't know, but at the same time, I think there is a lot that we all know, and we could tell with the human eye. And this
It
was a
was a
very
season that got derailed before it started, Justin.
right,
Let's say it as it is. 2
right,
days before training camp starts, our championship head coach gets fired.
right, right. And you can't say suspend. Oh, suspended. It's like essentially
Fired.
he was going to be
2
done.
days before our season, our championship, the biggest season in recent Celtic history, before it starts, our management fires the head coach for sleeping with the wrong girl. Can we just say it as it is? I'm sorry, but it's been a year. I'm tired of everyone beating around the bush, right? Please, I'm sorry. You know me. I try to be formal here. I try to be as professional as possible, but this episode's a little bit different in this topic more so. Ime slept with the wrong girl. He did. It's what happened. Everyone knows it. Someone got their feelings hurt. And trust me, most of us are all guys. Most of our audience are guys. We got some girl followers, but not a whole lot, right? We're all dudes. We know it. Sometimes it's easier to blame the guy than the girl. Am I wrong?
I just don't think we know the whole situation for me
Justin,
to even
Ime
comment on.
Udoka has a job in the NBA right now.
I understand that, but I don't, and I'm not saying you're wrong or right or wrong. What I'm saying is I don't know the situation on what happened. I don't know enough to comment on it. I really don't, because I think it puts it, I don't think I put myself in a right or wrong situation by saying what I don't know. No, I'm
But
serious, because we don't know what happened. We don't know this.
We know that there was a consensual relationship with someone related to the Boston Celtics. That's what we know. There was a consensual relationship, confirmed. Consensual relationship. Most important part of the whole thing, right there. The 2 words I just said, consensual relationship, because that changes everything. If that word consensual moves to unconsensual, then my point of view, my entire opinion on this changes. But the key words, the report that came out, the confirmed report, Justin, was consensual relationship. So let's do some inferring here. Let's use our common sense to put together my best inference. Ime Udoka slept with the girl, had a relationship with the girl within the Celtics organization and or circle, the management circle. Someone in that circle, he slept with the wrong person. And as a guy, it is easier to blame the other guy in the situation opposed to your spouse and or wife. If that's my best inference, that the dude who's close to Wick, close to management, in management, wherever his position lies, close to Wick, got his feelings hurt and demanded that the Boston Celtics move on from this guy. So that is where the Celtics screwed up. The fact that the report was that it was a consensual relationship and that Ime, less than a year later, has a job in the NBA tells me everything that I need to know, that someone got their feelings hurt. And that's that. That's on that matter. You're right. You're totally right in the sense where I respect the fact that you don't know the full story. You don't want to say it. I respect that, dude. You know me. But for my inferences, what I can piece together, I think that you look at the story, what we know, what the players don't know. I think if the Celtics told the players the truth, there would be crazy backlash. And I think that the truth is that some dude in the Celtics circle, in that management circle, whether it was the owner, minority owner, a shareholder, whatever it may be, someone got their feelings hurt. And someone put pressure on Wick to get him out of Boston because he is because money talks. And that is what I'm going to address on the Ime Udoka situation. Because at the end of the day, you can't change any of that. So let's talk about keeping this guy, Joe Mazzulla, who's got a bright future, if you ask me. 34 years old. He asked to do the impossible, and he came pretty damn close. So, Justin, I know you have an opposing view on this guy from me. But a guy I like for a scheming sense for this bench is Steven Silas.
Yeah,
I think the Celtics need to add a guy like Steven Silas.
yeah, so it's not an opposing view because I do agree they need to add somebody like that. I think it's more important to add a guy like an experienced coach, like a Kenny Atkinson, like a Mark Jackson, if he was willing to assist and coach, like a Frank Vogel or Doc Rivers or Mike Budenholzer. I get those guys are all successful head coaches, but we've seen many times successful head coaches, especially towards the end of their career, turn into assistant coaches. I think Steven Silas will bring that sort of connectivity to the players in terms of he's also young. He was, I think his father, Paul, who just recently passed away, was a part of the Celtics organization. Um, I think it's a solid move, but you also want to let I guess Missoula be comfortable with his coaching staff because like I said earlier, like normally coaches get to handpick their coaching staff and get to, you know, connect with guys that they are comfortable with, being around, comfortable relying on, comfortable trusting. Trust is such a big thing in a coaching staff. And it seems as if Steven Silas is really trusted within the Celtics organization as before the playoffs started earlier in the round, Silas was spotted at the training facility, spotted at the games with the coaching staff. So like you kind of figure that's going to happen.
That wasn't
No,
supposed
no,
to go
no, you're good.
that way.
It'd be a very, very solid, acquisition. But I also do think it's very important that you do find a more, not so much stable, but a more veteran experience. We talk about finding, veteran experienced players, find veteran experienced coaches as well.
Yeah. So the thing that's appealing to me with Steven Silas is his knowledge of basketball.
Mm.
He is a really good scheme guy. And I think that when you look at the Celtics, one of their things that they need to work on is getting Tatum and Brown in better positions to succeed. And I think Steven Silas can do that for us and help Joe in the aspect of showing Joe um aspects to the game that Joe hasn't seen. Because in terms of veteran, if you want to go veteran compared to Joe Mazzulla, like almost every coach is a veteran compared to Joe. He's young. He really hasn't coached. This was his really first coaching gig. He coached D2 for I think 2 years and then got called to the Celtics second row bench. So Joe's a pretty young guy. So a guy like Steven Silas where he can
younger than Horford.
yeah, younger than Al Horford, guy like Steven Silas where he can put Tatum and Brown, I think, in positions to succeed. I think you could pay huge dividends for the Celtics. We touched on this next one, adding veteran, experienced head coach. Justin nailed that for us. Some names. It's tough when you're talking about veteran head coach or veteran coach, not head coach. It's because you have to find a guy that's kind of willing to go to the bench. I don't, to be completely honest with you, I don't know a whole lot of veteran assistants around the league. A name in which I do know is a pop guy, and I tweeted him out. Hold on, I'm gonna find my thread real quick because I tweeted him out. His name, I believe, is Mike Williams. Mitch Johnson. I'm sorry. I was thinking Monty Williams. Mitch Johnson is the second assistant on the San Antonio Spurs. Super well respected, super defensive minded coach, and he helped Pop coach, I believe, the 2017 Spurs team that Kawhi Leonard got injured against the Warriors and they fell short of making the finals. That team had 68 wins. Mitch Johnson, I think, is a guy that you can throw money at, and he might not want to leave because of the situation the Spurs have right now in having potential Wembanyama coming into San Antonio. But that's a guy, Mitch Johnson, Mark Jackson. I also think I don't know if he would assist Joe Mazzulla. But I mean, I think money talks a lot of these times, and if you can match Mark Jackson's commentating salary, you double that maybe, or you add to that. I think a guy like Mark Jackson would be willing to join the staff.
Another name that I would throw out there, and he was thrown out there last season when Damon Stoudemire stepped down and went to coach college, um, is Jay Larinaga over in Los Angeles for the Los
Yeah.
Angeles Clippers. He was, came in, I believe, the last year of Doc Rivers or the first year of Brad Stevens. And he was one of my favorite coaches just because how well respected he was. He always kept a very positive attitude. And I know I sound like Missoula, oh, I love you and all that. But I think also finding a familiar face could also help this team out. So Jay Larinaga is certainly a coach that I would look into as well. And you go and you go see the Monty Williams and the Frank Vogels and the Doc Rivers and Mike D'Antoni. These big name head coaches that maybe are at the tail end of their coaching careers and might find themselves second on the bench. No. But
Yeah.
there are certainly options out there for the
Frank
Celtics.
Vogel, another name. I think Vogel and Silas. You add Silas for offense, Vogel for defense, and I think you got yourself a good little staff there. So that's the direction I'm going coaching. I think another really important factor this offseason, Justin, is keeping Brown and Tatum in the loop. Have them there for decisions. If you want to hire a coach, call them up. Hey, JB. Hey, JT.
What are you thinking?
XYZ we're looking at. What do you feel? Is this a guy you could see yourself being coached by? Do you like him? If you're trying to make a trade, hey, JB, want to make this trade? Hey, JB, hey, JT, Grant, how much, make them feel like they're part of the organization. Tatum has stressed a lot how much he loves the city, how much he loves being here. But it's just that factor, that trust that you have within the organization that I think your star players need to have. And I think you kind of lost some of that with the Ime situation. So that's another thing I'm focusing on here. Next one, find this team's got to find your team their identity. I think if I'm guessing it's going to be defense. I think they kind of went back to that in the last kind of couple games of the series. Got to find your team's identity. This next one, Justin, I think is huge. And when you talk about the Celtics bench and you talk about what happened, and let's look at this. All within the past year, the Celtics have lost Jalen Arnega, Will Hardy, Damon Stoudemire, and Ime Udoka. 4 guys who were probably the best. That's really good coaching staff. Arnega, phenomenal. Hardy, coaching, doing a great job down there in Utah. I believe he was a coach of the year candidate for a lot of the year. Phenomenal guy. Damian Stoudemire, former NBA player. All the guys love Damian. He got his he got a head coaching gig where? Was it not Georgetown. Was it Georgetown?
I don't know where it was, but I for some stupid reason it keeps popping in my head. It's Virginia, but it's not Virginia.
Come on, let's do some. Can you do that for me, or do you want
Yeah,
me to do it?
No, I'll do it. Let's get a little fact check because we want to be correct because we also want to give these coaches a lot of credit because, like you said, the Celtics have had a tremendous amount of coaching within the organization over the last few years. Even throw in Brad Stevens, who's still within the organization. Who is currently the coach for Georgia.
Georgia
or Georgia Tech?
No.
Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech. Yeah. I knew it was a G. At Georgetown, Georgia Tech, something like that.
I said I don't know why.
So I think so you lost a lot of depth on your coaching staff already. So I really do think as far as this team went, they had to go through a lot of changes. It was a tough year for this team, and I think they did solid. Call me crazy, but I do. But yeah, former player JJ Redick. I think there is a lot of players and people in the media, sports media right now, who would love to help this Celtics team win, because the media, they don't like Boston, but they love Tatum and Brown. They think those 2 guys are special. I think Redick, Richard Jefferson, whoever it may be, right?
KG.
Right? Whoever, Kevin Garnett, Paul, whoever, Eddie House, Scalabrine, right? Whoever it may be. I think you need that former player who the players relate to, the coach can relate to them, and a former player just sees the game differently than anyone else sees it. if you were in the NBA, you see the game differently. You just do. You know something that everyone else doesn't. I think you kind of need that aspect on your bench somewhere. So a former player, Justin, I think would be important.
I mean, we saw that 2 years ago with Evan Turner becoming one of the assistant coaches in player development, which is crappy as a year the Celtics had, that 500 year. That was that weird COVID year after the bubble. That was kind of when we kind of saw this evolution of Jason Tatum really becoming a thing, right? Like this whole 50, these 40, 50, 60-point games are just starting to come regularly for Jason Tatum that year. Especially during the end of the season against Minnesota, Brooklyn, Washington in the play-in. San Antonio. So I think, you hit the nail on the coffin right there. Somebody who doesn't necessarily have to have this huge drastic influence, but just a player who the Celtics can really relate to. Really,
presence is felt.
100%. And I think Joe Mazzulla would be all over the JJ Redick, just because how, it seems as if Mazzulla has this huge fetish for 3-pointers and shooting and spacing the floor. And I think you quite literally get that with JJ Redick.
Yeah.
You kind of see Kyle Korver doing the same thing over in who is it, Atlanta, who he's with, or Cleveland? He's with one of the two. But
either in Atlanta or something tells me he's in
Brooklyn.
I think he's in Brooklyn.
But either way, a former player like that who can go in there and really inspire the guys.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think that former players are I bet if you go to a lot of championship teams, they got a former player on their coaching staff. Or a player like that. Like Iguodala with the Warriors, he kind of like has them with right? Like, yeah, they're players. But if you don't have one on the staff, you have one of those guys that doesn't really play, but he's pretty much a coach at the end of the bench. Like we got Blake Griffin, but Griffin's not really there yet. Griffin's still kind of young. He's like 34. Like he's not super old.
I mean, like a Haslam, dude. Like we saw it in the Miami series. Like he really, in a George Hill of Indiana, he really wants to take on that Haslam role, almost like a player coach. If you need me on the bench, but if not, I'm here to help you out. I'm here to guide you. I think you see Jared Dudley out in I think it's Dallas. He's now an assistant coach there, a former player.
So I think that's really important. And I think that the thing that scares me most with Mazzulla is he doesn't know how to work with Tatum and Brown. I think you bring a former player in and they know how to work with superstars. So I think that by bringing one of those types of guys in, it makes Mazzulla's focused on keeping the guys locked in, maintaining the locker room, stuff like that. So I think that by bringing a former player in, it helps in other aspects that kind of Mazzulla doesn't know quite yet. And it allows for the Celtics to move forward coaching wise. Next one we got up here in the last one, kind of already talked about it, but you got to find the Jays a staff in which they're comfortable with. You got to run your decision making through the Jays this off season. Again, the Udoka situation was handled so poorly. You got to do that. So I want to answer some of your guys' questions here. I want to know what you guys think the Celtics need to do. So in the comments, I want you guys to tell me players you want to see, moves you want to think we should be addressed, a coach you might like, whatever it may be. Where do the Celtics start? I want to know, what do you guys think the Boston Celtics should do this offseason? I want to hear it. Let's see if we can because we've covered all we have to cover, but let's open up a little bit of Q&A. If you guys got anything you want to ask us on our opinions or whatever it may be, fire away. We'll open it up for a little bit. And then, so Korver is the assistant GM with the Hawks, by the way. So I'm going to just go into that.
Okay, boom.
I thought it was Brooklyn because I feel like he was working with Simmons.
I think he was.
But maybe that was maybe who else was that?
No, I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I think it was.
So someone says Naz Reid's another good name. I'd like Naz Reid, extend Brown. Agree with that. Trade Pritchard and Hauser for a wing like that. Get Monty Williams. I love all of that. Biggest question there is, will Monty Williams, Justin, be willing to take a assistant job, maybe for a 2-year or 2. But do you think he would?
Was he an assistant coach before, or did he start off right away as a?
Monty Williams, I know he was the coach for that Hornets team back with Chris Paul, and then he went. Oh, I'm looking it up right now. Monty Williams was in Portland from 06 to 10 as an assistant. Was
Where Rob? I don't know what he just did. He was for Philly. I need to work on that. Yeah, we talked about that earlier in the show. That's become a real problem for Jaylen Brown. That is free throw. He's happy to free throw. He's horrible too. Just weird for people like slow, almost a glitch. Yeah, so Monty Williams. With the San Antonio Spurs, he won the title. He's head coach, hired by new head coach Music Man as the Trailblazers. 2015, he was associate head coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's where I remember him from. He was on the Thunder. And then a year later, he was announced that he would not return with the Thunder. Brett Brown announced, yes, so you were correct. He was with Philly as well. Yeah, so, okay. Awesome. All right, listen, guys. We're going to wrap it up. I just want to say thank you very much on behalf of Rob and I. This was an incredible playoff run for Celtics Talk Weekly. Obviously, the Celtics fell short of the goal, and that goal was a title. But at the same time, we are really, really excited to bring you coverage of another, hopefully, entertaining and what's productive off season, successfully productive off season. So we're going to bring it content wise. We're going to bring it consistency wise. We're going to bring the best coverage that we can possibly get. I know, we might just seem like a couple 20-year-olds talking, maybe not knowing what we're talking about. But we put a lot of time and effort into the Celtics and Celtics Talk Weekly. Rob's computer died. So we, on behalf of Rob and I, thank you so much for your consistent love and support, especially throughout the playoffs. Our following has grown on all social medias, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. So we appreciate that. But, we are more humble. We are very humble, and we are very excited, and we're very thankful for everything that you guys continue to support us on. So very disappointing end to the season, a blowout on your home court in Game 7. Essentially, you almost made history, but in Boston, we don't celebrate second place. We don't celebrate almost. So it's back to the drawing board for the Celtics. Stay tuned. A lot of changes coming for Celtics Talk Weekly in the best way possible. So stay tuned for that. Keep checking up on our social medias. Give us a follow on Instagram at Celtics Talk Weekly. Give us a follow on Twitter. Celtics at Celtics_weekly, and subscribe to our YouTube channel right here. Oh my God, if you have not yet. Again, love and appreciate all of you. Jaylen Brown, re-sign him. Grant Williams, re-sign him. Run it back. Add without subtracting if you could. If you do subtract, make sure what you do subtract, you're getting back in better value. That's going to be very important. But it's on the Summer League, baby. It's Yam Madar season. Right, Rob? Is Rob still in the chat? It's Yam Madar season. Rob hates Summer League, so he doesn't support me. But peace and love, guys. Go Celtics. We're going to be all right.